Hello there! Welcome to another year-end special of Motoring Today on the year that was in motoring. I'm Ray Louie Gamboa.
And I'm Susie Gamboa. Every year we take a look back at everything that happened related to motoring and public transport, the woes and joys of driving and commuting in Metro Manila and the rest of the country, the pains and gains of developing an efficient mass transport system and road infrastructure.
The year that was in motoring is unprecedented, all because of a virus that forced people to stay at home and ground motoring and public transport to a virtual halt.
Much of major happenings and issues in motoring soon stemmed from how the country learned to live under the threat of a deadly and contagious coronavirus.
So please stay tuned. When we return, we take a look back at the year that was in motoring in the time of COVID-19.
This Motoring Today year-end special episode is brought to you by Honda Cars Philippines, Mitsubishi Motors Philippines, Prudential Guarantee, Suzuki Philippines, and Toyota Motor Philippines.
What do we go for? We go for experience. We go for excitement. We go for sport. We go for style. We go for fun. We go for the new Toyota Wigo.
Montero Sport. Elevate your journey.
Drive your ambition. Mitsubishi Motors.
Welcome back to our special episode on the year that was in motoring in the time of COVID-19.
2020 started innocuously enough. People were focused on perennial motoring problems, traffic congestion, commuting safety, and efficiency or the lack thereof, and government action or inaction to solving these problems.
The first month of every year naturally sees carryover issues and problems. January of 2020 was no different. The biggest issue was about motorcycle taxis. A pilot study was being conducted, ordered by Congress, that was looking to make motorcycle taxis a legal mode of public transport. Controversy arose over Senator Coco Pimentel endorsing the inclusion of joyride in the study. A lawyers group said the senator could face graft raps for that endorsement. Attorney Ariel Inton of the Lawyers for Commuter Safety and Protection said legislators have no business interceding for a private party that has an application with a government entity. Motorcycle taxi hailing service Angkas also got into hot water with the LTFRB for staging mass actions over issues concerning the pilot study, the inclusion of new pilot study participants, the 10,000 riders cap, etc. Angkas also filed court cases questioning the revised guidelines of the pilot study, including the 10,000 rider cap. The LTFRB also said Angkas could face sanctions, including removal from the pilot study, over alleged illicit operations of Angkas motorcycle taxi service providers in Cagayan de Oro without its authorization. The technical working group overseeing the pilot pushed for its early end in reaction to Angkas's actions, which it said impeded the study. However, senators expressed dismay, saying the move to end the pilot study was arbitrary, unjust, and without basis. Senator Grace Poe, chair of the Senate Committee on Public Services, said the Senate intends to pass a law on motorcycle taxis based on the result of careful studies which the Technical Working Group, or TWG, is supposed to conduct. Angkas Chief Transport Advocate George Royeca soon came out in a press conference to maintain that Angkas has been complying with regulations and guidelines of the pilot study, but asked for fairness in the enforcement of the rules. Royeca added that they're fighting against the 10,000 rider cap and not with the regulators from government. In other words, trabaho lang, walang personalan. The House also weighed in on the motorcycle taxi controversies, and attended by the TWG and other stakeholders, the following were agreed upon. The TWG will complete the pilot study. 3 motorcycle transport network companies participating in the study will each have 15,000 riders for their Metro Manila operations under the new cap, 9,000 for their operations in Metro Cebu, and an additional 9,000 for Cagayan de Oro City. Should a TNC fail to fill up its allotted number of riders under the cap, the other players can have the available slots. Following the agreement, Angkas dropped its court cases against the LTFRB and even gladly paid a penalty imposed by the DOTR to help relief efforts for communities adversely affected by the Taal volcano eruption. Caloro motorcycle operators soon reared their ugly heads. Unauthorized ride-hailing apps with names like Sampa and Kandong began to operate illegally. Motorcycle riders offering rides at illegal terminals or waiting for passengers at shift change times at call centers proliferated. Authorities began employing undercover informants, or so-called mystery riders, to nab Caloro motorcycle operators. The MMDA soon joined the campaign to catch habal-habal riders and their terminals. At the start of the year, the DOTR again partnered with the United Nations Development Program to promote low-carbon urban transport systems. At the event, attended by mass transportation stakeholders from the government and the private sector, the DOTR cited the need to address the environmental impact of the transportation sector. The event focused on creating an enabling environment for the commercialization of low-carbon urban transport systems, like electric and hybrid vehicles in the country. Local transport authorities also cited the PUV Modernization Program, or PUVMP, the Motor Vehicle Inspection System, or MVIS, and the promotion of non-motorized transport through the Metro Manila Greenways project as part of efforts to promote low-carbon urban transport systems. No one could have predicted that low-carbon transport will become a vital part of transportation in the coming months. Pasang Mazda launched the third batch of 30 Isuzu QKR Class 3 modern jeepneys in Maykawayan, Bulacan. Each Isuzu QKR Class 3 modern jeepney can accommodate 23 passengers and is equipped with an automated fare collection system, GPS tracking system, dash cameras, CCTV, and Wi-Fi. In the same quarter, Isuzu Philippines presented to the DOTR a Class 1 PUV based on the Isuzu Travis lightweight truck. In modern PUV guise, the Isuzu Travis can accommodate 13 passengers and its small size is perfect for narrow urban streets. Isuzu added that the Travis Modern PUV is a more affordable option for transport cooperatives to get started in the PUV MP. Before the first quarter ended, the PNR announced that it has acquired 2 new train sets of 4 rail cars each as part of the railway's refleeting program. The new trains acquired from Indonesian rolling stock manufacturer PT Industri Kereta Api can accommodate 1,000 passengers per trip. Following 150 hours of validation tests and the send-off ceremony, the train sets were deployed for commercial operations on the Tutuban to Alabang route. The PNR said it also expected to have 2 more diesel-electric multiple-unit train sets, 3 locomotives, and 15 passenger coaches and 2 shunters within the first half of 2020. Once all these new trains are operational, the PNR said it can ferry a total of 140,000 passengers per day, at least double the current capacity of 48,000 to 60,000 passengers daily. The DPWH also had good news to start the year. DPWH announced the partial opening of the C3-R10 section of NLEX Harbor Link Segment 10 by March. It's an elevated expressway that will provide direct access between R10 in Navotas City and NLEX. The opening of the C3-R10 section will benefit the transport logistics industry, as cargo trucks will have 24/7 access from the port to NLEX, sparring them from the truck ban and congested local roads, the DPWH said. More good news came in the first quarter, with Villar announcing the official opening of the Malabon exit of the NLEX Harbor Link C3-R10 section along Dagat-Dagatan Avenue. NLEX Corporation President and General Manager Luigi Bautista. The Malabon exit was opened a month before the whole NLEX Harbor Link C3-R10 section was completed in response to the clamor of motorists for immediate relief from traffic in the Kamanava area. The said road starts from Caloocan Interchange on C3 Road to Radial Road 10, Navotas City, which then links to the 5.65-kilometer NLEX Harbor Link Segment 10. The opening of the new link is expected to reduce travel time from port area to NLEX to just 10 minutes. In February, the DOTR was already beginning to take note of the COVID-19 pandemic spreading in other countries and initiated health and safety measures in the country's transportation hubs. Transport Secretary Arthur Tugade said the DOTR was closely coordinating with the Department of Health and the Bureau of Quarantine in efforts to secure transport terminals from the 2019 NCOV and in closely monitoring arriving passengers. The LTFRB also began mandating all PUV drivers and conductors to properly wear face masks while on duty and for all franchise holders to ensure compliance. The plan to privatize the Motor Vehicle Inspection System, or MVIS for common carriers, and the use of Euro 4 standards as an MVIS criteria became a trending topic on social media and traditional media. A newly formed National Public Transportation Coalition, or the NPTC, came out to oppose the privatization of the MVIS. This prompted the DOTR to issue clarifications on the MVIS privatization and said NPTC was misguided and misinformed. The privatization of MVIS will free government of budgetary expenditure and operational burden needed for the inspection, the DOTR said. It added that the Accreditation Committee has nothing to do with the determination of technical specifications of the MVIS and fees. It is only concerned with the selection process. Near the end of the first quarter, the DOTR revealed several private motor vehicle inspection centers, or MVICs, have been inspected and ready to operate. This comes with the capability to provide results to the LTO on a real-time basis. At this time, connectivity is on an individual basis. However, the DOTR is drafting a memorandum circular that will initiate the establishment of permanent IT connectivity for operations of MVICs. Road safety advocates welcome the signing and approval of the Implementing Rules and Regulations, or the IRR, for the Republic Act 11229, or Child Safety on Motor Vehicles Act. Republic Act 11229 mandates the use of child restraint systems for children below 12 years old on private motor vehicles. It also mandates that no child will be allowed on the front seat of a motor vehicle with a running engine, or while such child is being transported on any road, street, or highway. The DOTR allayed concerns of the Quezon City government that the MRT 7 Quezon Memorial Circle Station would affect the historical integrity of the city's monuments and park. It said that San Miguel Corporation, which is the major concessionaire of the MRT 7 project, has expressed openness to review and look at new designs and come up with one acceptable to both. The DOTR also addressed concerns over another big-ticket item of the government's Build, Build, Build program, the Metro Manila Subway. Talk went around that the Metro Subway project runs across the West Valley Fault. The DOTR said the design and alignment of the Metro Manila Subway took into consideration the location of the West Valley Fault. The Japanese consultants of the project consulted with Philbo about possible hazards that may affect construction and the structural integrity of subway once completed, the DOTR said. Soon after, the DOTR reported that the tunnel boring machines for the Metro Manila Subway project have been ordered. Japanese contractor Shimizu Corporation and the Japan International Cooperation Agency conducted a presentation on the TBM and how it will accelerate the construction of the subway project. Imagine Law, a public interest law organization that develops and advocates for evidence-based government policies, again invited experts from the Global Road Safety Partnership, or GRSP, to hold another national speed enforcement training for trainers. This was the second batch to get advanced training on speed enforcement, particularly on vehicle identification and apprehension. During the training, the LTO maintained that it was determined to heighten enforcement of speed limits in the Philippines. Aside from the training, LTO sat down with Imagine Law, GRSP, PNP Highway Patrol Group, and the MMDA to develop a Philippine speed enforcement plan. The plan aims to map out all activities that will be conducted by enforcement agencies leading up to widespread enforcement of speed limits. In the first quarter of 2020, the LTO initiated reforms in the issuance of driver's licenses. The reform begins with requiring applicants for student driver's permits to undergo 15 hours of classes on traffic laws, rules and regulations, and road courtesy. Only after getting a student's permit can applicants enroll in private driving schools or LTO training offices. Next comes passing both theoretical and practice driving exams supervised by the LTO. At the same time, drivers who have no record of traffic violations are entitled to licenses with 10-year validity upon renewing their licenses. The LTO, following a directive from the DOTR, is drafting driver's license test questions in English, Tagalog, or Filipino, and other mother tongues of Filipinos in different regions. LTO Assistant Secretary Edgar Galvante said the agency has formed teams to translate the tests into each of the major languages. Each draft translation will be validated by experts in the language. The MMDA got tough on bus drivers found to have multiple traffic violations. MMDA officials, led by General Manager Jojo Garcia, met with city bus operators and representatives from the LTO, LTFRB, and TESTA to discuss actions to be taken against public utility bus drivers who are habitual traffic violators. The MMDA issued a list of bus drivers with multiple traffic violation citations. It said that those on the list will not be allowed to be dispatched from terminals in the metropolis. Of a total of 12,000 drivers with multiple violations, only 2,500 drivers answered the show cause orders issued to them by the LTO. In the middle of March, government declared community quarantine, then enhanced community quarantine or ECQ in Metro Manila, neighboring areas, and provinces where COVID-19 cases were rising in numbers. In essence, ECQ was a stay-at-home order for everyone except so-called authorized persons outside residence, or APORs, those in essential trades and services like groceries and supermarkets, medical centers, and hospitals. All forms of public transport were suspended. Overnight, much of Metro Manila turned into a ghost town, with streets empty of vehicles. Government agencies turned all attention to fighting the spread of the disease. With public transport suspended, the DOTR soon found the need to provide safe transport services to so-called frontliners, medical personnel, and other workers of hospitals and clinics. Transport Secretary Arthur Togade instructed road sector agencies to deploy buses to ferry frontline health workers free of charge. With the cooperation and coordination with the LTFRB, Philippine Coast Guard, the DPWH, and HM Transit, 10 initial buses were deployed at 7 a.m. of that day to 2 identified pickup points, the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange and the BFCT East Metro Transport Terminal in Marikina. The buses plied several routes in Metro Manila, all linked to hospitals and medical centers. The DOTR also partnered with the Electric Kick Scooter of the Philippines to launch the Lend a Scooter campaign to provide safe transport to health workers. With the use of an electric kick scooter, social distancing measures can be observed while also being environment friendly with its zero emission and low noise pollution. The main beneficiaries of the campaign were health workers and other personnel of the Philippine General Hospital. Overhead expressways, SMT Tollways assigned priority lanes on slicks for cargo haulers transporting basic goods, as well as emergency health services to and from Metro Manila and neighboring provinces in the south. The tollway company implemented safety measures to protect motorists and their employees from COVID-19. The DPWH announced that tollway operators have agreed to waive toll fees for medical frontliners. Secretary Villar said that SMC Infrastructure, Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation, and Ayala Corporation have all agreed to waive toll payments at all its expressways for the duration of the enhanced community quarantine. SMC earlier announced that special RFID stickers will be issued to medical practitioners who present their Professional Regulation Commission licenses. MPTC, which operates the NLEX, the SCTEX, the Cavitex, the CALAX, Seafide Southlink, and NLEX HarborLink, also started its free pass for frontliners.
In the last 2 weeks of the first quarter of 2020, many things changed. The priorities of government, people and communities, businesses, and trades.
Did these continue into the second quarter? Stay with us to find out.
This Motoring Today year-end special episode is brought to you by Honda Cars Philippines, Mitsubishi Motors Philippines, Prudential Guarantee, Suzuki Philippines, and Toyota Motor Philippines.
What do we go for? We go for experience. We go for excitement. We go for sport. We go for style. We go for fun. We go for the
extra.
with the new Mitsubishi Xpander Cross.
Welcome back to our year-end special on the year that was in motoring in the time of COVID-19.
While government worked to solve problems brought by the coronavirus as they come, the private sector stepped up to help the government and the people overcome the difficulties.
Among the more visible members of the private sector helping government in the pandemic was San Miguel Corporation. In April, more than 2,000 medical frontliners availed themselves of the toll-free RFID stickers valid at all expressways under SMC. SMC vowed to keep the tollways operational while the entirety of Luzon was under ECQ to help keep the flow of essential goods and personnel unimpeded. Priority lanes were designated for medical frontliners and vehicles carrying essential goods. The DOTR was among the first to reach out to the private sector for help during the pandemic. To help frontliners access its free Ride for Health Workers program, the DOTR partnered with Google, which integrated the free bus routes and pickup points on the Google Map app on mobile phones. Even under ECQ, the PNR continued to receive trains ordered from Indonesian rolling stock manufacturer PT Industri Kereta Api. 2 sets of trains which arrived on March 28 were ready to undergo reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety checks in preparation for deployment once public transport was allowed to resume operations. In May, public transport systems were allowed to resume operations in areas under GCQ, subject to restriction in capacity and compliance with guidelines to minimize the risk of spreading the coronavirus. Buses and jeepneys were allowed to operate at 50% capacity. UV Express shuttles and taxis could not exceed 2 occupants per row of seats. Tricycles can only ferry 1 passenger per trip and no back ride allowed. Private cars and motorcycles were allowed back on streets but only for essential travel. Private vehicles could only accommodate 2 occupants per row of seats. Tandem riding on motorcycles was not allowed. The DOTR encouraged the use of bicycles and e-scooters. In line with this, the DOTR encouraged local government units to identify and delineate bike lanes. The DOTR also set guidelines for the safe operation of bus depots and terminals to ensure rules for social distancing and the wearing of face masks are complied with, while provisions are put in place to encourage washing of hands and using of sanitizers. Also in May, the DOTR issued guidelines for the safe resumption of railway-based transportation in areas under GCQ. Aside from operating under reduced capacity onboard trains or coaches, guidelines were issued for health and safety measures at train stations. These include placing alcohol-based sanitizers in strategic locations and availability of hand wash and soap in all toilets, disinfection of train interiors at least every loop, as well as station premises, wearing of face masks, use of non-contact thermometers to identify and refuse entry to passengers registering heightened body temperatures. The PNR and light rail transits marked out seats and areas on board trains as well as at stations to ensure social distancing protocols are maintained. This severely reduced their capacity to just around 10 to 13%. Following Department of Health protocols, the following were not allowed to take trains: passengers not wearing the proper face mask, those showing COVID-19 symptoms or with a body temperature of 37.8 or higher, and at-risk people, senior citizens, those aged 0 to 20, and pregnant women. In the middle of May, the LTFRB issued strict guidelines for the resumption of operations of taxis and Transport Network Vehicle Services, or TNVS, in areas under GCQ. Aside from limiting capacity, the guidelines on cashless or non-contact payment in both TNVS and taxi units are provided. Taxis must also now have web-based apps for booking and online payment purposes. TNVS units must also be equipped with global navigation satellite system as well as dashboard and CCTV cameras. For street hail transactions, the LTFRB directs operators and drivers to enroll in available electronic payment providers. Taxi and TNVS operators must also maintain a daily record of passengers for the purpose of contact tracing. Also, by the middle of May, almost 2 months after Luzon was placed under ECQ, authorities began to allow certain business and trades to resume operations under limited capacity and subject to strict health protocols. Among those allowed to resume operations were construction. San Miguel Corporation soon announced that it will resume construction of the Skyway Extension project. San Miguel said that safety, sanitation, and other health measures were already in place at the Skyway construction site, even prior to the resumption of construction. These include hand sanitation and disinfecting facilities with soap, water, and alcohol made available. Workers will also be housed in on-site facilities provided by the company. The MRT-3 took advantage of the suspension of passenger operations to fast-track the rehabilitation of the tracks and station facilities. Even while under GCQ, the MRT-3 was given the green light by the Interagency Task Force on COVID-19 to resume all rail replacement activities. The MRT-3 eyed completion rail replacement work by September of 2020, months ahead of its February 2021 target. Metro Pacific Tollways South Management Corporation, or MPT South, also resumed construction work on the Cavitex and the Calax. This includes the road widening for the Cavitex R1 second phase and work on bridges in Parañaque, Las Piñas, and Wawa. MPT South President and General Manager Bobby Bontia said that acceleration of completion of the project is being considered with encouragement from the DPWH. As construction works were allowed to resume, many big-ticket items of the government's Build, Build, Build program went back on track. This includes the NLEX Harbor Link C3R10 section, which will extend its Segment 10 to Radial Road 10 via the C3 road. Following an inspection in June, Public Works Secretary Mark Villar reported that work on the said road was back on track and was expected to be completed by June 15. The Harbor Link project is expected to cut travel time from Quezon City to Manila from 2 hours to only 10 minutes. It will also provide direct access to and from the port area and northern provinces of Luzon. With more businesses, trades, and services allowed to reopen, traffic on EDSA began to look busier by June. The MMDA and the DOTR began to reveal plans to transform EDSA into 2 phases: the creation of median bus lanes and the rationalization of routes. This transformation will see buses given a dedicated lane on the innermost lane of EDSA, where loading and unloading bays will also be installed. EDSA will also have a 1.5-meter wide bike lane next to the curb. Bicycles have, by necessity, become popular for personal transport during the lockdown and remain so even as more and more modes of public transport resume operations. During the early days of the community quarantine, groups have taken to setting up lanes for bikers during rush hours while continuing to clamor for more support from the MMDA and local government units. Amid criticism about the lack of bike lanes to keep bikers safe, the MMDA revealed that discussions have already started on creating a bicycle road network in Metro Manila and that the installation of more bike lanes is included in government's long-term plans. When the MRT-3 resumed operations under severely limited capacity, a bus augmentation plan was put in place to provide added options for travel on EDSA. The first unit of the bus augmentation scheme departs the station at 5:30 a.m., while the last departs at 8 p.m. The buses use the median lane of EDSA, and buses leave at 5-minute intervals from the stations. Near midpoint of the year, the NLEX officially opened the elevated 2.6-kilometer segment of the NLEX Harbor Link to motorists and freight carriers. The newly opened section features the new Caloocan interchange with on- and off-ramps along Grace Park, the new Malabon exit with off-ramp on the Gatagatan Avenue, and the new Navotas interchange with on- and off-ramps on North Bay Boulevard South. This new section brings NLEX closer to the country's central shipping gateway, the port area. The transport of goods is expected to speed up, and economic activities will increase in Metro Manila and the north and central Luzon regions. Another group from the private sector stepped up in the second quarter of the COVID-19 year. Grab Philippines launched its Grab Bayanihan program to help those who lost their livelihoods in the city of Manila. Grab moved to hire and train 2,000 tricycle drivers and other displaced workers to work as Grab Food and Grab Express delivery partners. Grab also reached out to at least 500 micro, small, and medium enterprises to give them access to the online markets where they can continue selling their products. In Quezon City, Lala Move partnered with the local government to launch Lala Jeep, an initiative to give jeepney drivers who can't yet ply their routes a chance to earn by delivering goods and products. Lala Jeep also provides an affordable option for delivering their products to online customers. The Quezon City government facilitated group training sessions for jeepney drivers who signed up to participate in the Lala Jeep initiative. As the community quarantine period extended and motorcycles became a popular mode of private transport, people began clamoring for backriding to be allowed. Responding to the clamor, the DOTR announced that backriding will be allowed, but subject to conditions and guidelines that health authorities and the IATF were still formulating. Meanwhile, the DOTR also said the pilot study on the feasibility and safety of motorcycle taxis has ended, and the findings and recommendations of the technical working group have been sent to Congress. The LTFRB finally gave the go signal for modern jeepneys that have complied with the requirements set by the Omnibus Franchising Guidelines to ply routes in Metro Manila, which had just been placed under GCQ. Earlier, the DOTR said that the resumption of public transportation in the metropolis would be phased in. From June 1 to 21, trains, taxis, transport network vehicle service units, shuttle services, P2P buses, and tricycles were allowed to operate. From June 22 onwards, public utility buses, modern PUVs, and UV Express shuttles were phased in. The LTFRB said it was extra careful in crafting the guidelines to balance the mandate to provide transportation needs while also being responsible in helping prevent the spread of COVID-19.
That was the first half of the year that was in motoring, when all, including government and the private sector, learned how to live under the threat of a deadly virus.
Please stay with us for the second half of this year-end special.
This Motoring Today year-end special episode is brought to you by Honda Cars Philippines, Mitsubishi Motors Philippines, Prudential Guarantee, Suzuki Philippines, and Toyota Motor Philippines.
What do we go for? We go for experience. We go for excitement. We go for sport. We go for style. We go for fun. We go for the new Toyota Wigo.
Your city is about to change. Are you ready? Ready to rise? Ready to rock? Ready to go? Ready for more? Ready to rule the city. The all-new Honda City. Ready to rule.
Montero Sport. Elevate your journey.
Drive your ambition. Mitsubishi Motors.
Welcome back to Motoring Today's review of the year that's ending.
We head to the third quarter of the year when government began to further ease restrictions, allowed more businesses to reopen, more public transportation to return to service, and more motorists back on the streets.
The promised transformation of EDSA got more clarity. The MMDA reported that the transformation will include dealienating an exclusive lane for buses. now in the innermost lane instead of the outer yellow lanes of pre-COVID EDSA. Bus stops on center islands are strategic junctions, and protected bike lanes sliced out of the outermost lane. By July, work on EDSA transformation was going full blast. 12 bus stations along what the DOTR and the MMDA have begun calling the EDSA busway were completed, with more on the way. MMDA said it was also expediting the procurement and delivery of concrete barriers to mark out the busway and the bike lanes. As envisioned by transport authorities, the EDSA busway will have at least 550 buses plying a loop from Monumento and Caloocan to Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange using the innermost lanes when on EDSA, and taking on and unloading passengers at designated stops erected in the center of the metro's busiest thoroughfare. Before the month was over, the EDSA busway started what authorities called interim operations. The middle lane of EDSA was yet to be fully enclosed by barriers or delineated by yellow lines, but already, buses were given exclusive use of the busway for the interim operation. During the pandemic, the LTO fast-tracked plans to implement more online transactions and limit face-to-face interactions with the public. Among the processes facilitated online were applications for new and the renewal of drivers' and conductors' licenses, as well as other miscellaneous transactions. The LTO said online applications for licenses, as well as payment of fees, is being made possible through the Land Transport Management System, now being pilot tested and fast-tracked by the DOTR. After months of public pressure to allow pillion riding amid the dearth of allowed public transport modes during various levels of community quarantine controls, the IATF relented to allow couples living in the same house to ride tandem on motorcycles. Notable for advocates of diversity was IATF officials clarifying that couples, married or not, and regardless of gender or sexual orientation, would be permitted to ride tandem on motorcycles as long as they live in the same house. Just bring proof like copies of marriage certificates or IDs showing the same surnames or the same addresses. Other conditions include wearing of face masks and helmets with full face visor, the use of approved protective barriers between rider and pillion passenger. Approved barriers included the prototype proposed by Bohol Governor Arthur Yap for use in his province, and the backpack-type barrier proposed for safe pillion riding by Angkas. The DPWH was active during the lockdowns in getting infrastructure projects back on track or moving off drawing boards and onto implementation. Among projects that go back on track was the construction of 2 new segments of the Cavitex C5 Link Expressway, a 7.70-kilometer tollway running from the R1 Parañaque Toll Plaza to C5 Road in Taguig. DPWH Secretary Mark Villar and Cavitex officials led groundbreaking rites for the construction project to be undertaken by AM Oreta and Company Incorporated and China Harbor Engineering Company Ltd. The end of July saw the opening of the final segment of the TP-Lex to motorists that was completed and opened while much of the country was on lockdown. San Miguel and the DPWH formally opened the final 11-kilometer segment of the 89.21-kilometer TP-Lex to motorists. At the ceremony opening the final TP-Lex segment, San Miguel President Ramon Ang reiterated the company's commitment to continuing its investments in growth-generating and job-creating projects that will help build the resilience of people. Angkas, the local pioneer of app-based motorcycle taxi services, quietly launched a campaign to convince the IATF that motorcycle taxi services can be safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. It first presented to the public a prototype of the backpack-type protective barrier between rider and pillion passenger, which was approved for use by the IATF. Next, it tapped the University of the Philippines College of Public Health, or UP-CPH, to come up with a study on how to make motorcycle taxi services relatively safe in the pandemic. In a press conference, Dr. Vicente Belisario Jr., UP-CPH Dean, revealed that they were finalizing proposed health and safety protocols for motorcycle taxi services during the pandemic. These recommendations were then presented to the IATF for approval. ANCA's Chief Transport Advocate George Royesa said they were hopeful IATF will allow and set protocols for the safe operation of motorcycle taxis as the country transitions to the new normal. The LTO has extended the validity of vehicle registrations and deadlines for renewal since authorities ordered community lockdowns. When LTO offices resume operation and reduce capacities, it continued to give vehicle owners more time to register their vehicles. This is to avoid congestion at its offices and to ensure consistent observance of physical distancing protocols, the LTO said. The extension order in August covered the vehicle registration validity of motor vehicles with plate numbers ending in 6, 7, and 8. Their registration papers were now valid until September 30, 2020. The LTO said the new deadline for renewal of vehicles with license plate numbers ending in 9 is October 31, 2020, and for those ending in 0 is November 30, 2020. In August, authorities placed Metro Manila and nearby provinces back under Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, or MECQ, after cases of COVID-19 rose. Under guidelines issued by IATF, public transportation is generally not allowed while under MECQ. These include light rail transits, buses, jeepneys, taxis, transport network vehicle service units, UV Express, and the like. Public shuttles were still permitted to transport frontline workers or those who will return to work in industries, trades, or services allowed to operate under MECQ, but private shuttles still need special permits from the LTFRB. In August, authorities mandated the use of face shields in addition to face masks when taking public transport, after noting that the public transport seemed to be a vector in the spread of the coronavirus. Some local governments, where COVID-19 cases continue to spike, also began mandating the use of face shields in indoor spaces. Complaints arose over what many saw as an additional expense, as the cost of face shield initially spiked following the order, although soon prices dropped. Secretary Tugade issued the appeal after seeing and hearing the complaints posted or aired on social and broadcast media. He said the face shield should not be seen as added expense and inconvenience, but as an additional layer of protection against the spread of COVID-19. South of Metro Manila, construction work on 2 interchanges of the Cavite-Laguna Expressway were completed and open to motorists. Motorists now have a new access to the Laguna Technopark and an alternate route to and from Nuvali following the opening of the Laguna Boulevard interchange and the Laguna Technopark interchange of the Cavite-Laguna Expressway. With new alternate routes available to motorists, traffic congestion on the Santa Rosa-Tagaytay Road and other local service roads was expected to ease. One of the criticisms about the EDSA busway was that it was dangerous for passengers to be getting off and on buses through the right side doors where vehicles are speeding past, even with concrete barriers installed. The DOTR addressed this by having buses with doors on the left side plying the EDSA busway system just after public transportation was allowed to resume operations following a brief return to MECQ. However, only 3 such buses began to ply the route. These were operated by HM Transport Incorporated, a member of the Mega Manila Consortium. one of two consortiums which signed on to use the EDSA busway. The DOTR did not say if all buses operating on EDSA busway would be required to have left side doors. Soon after, the Joint Task Force COVID Shield, the group tasked to, among other things, ensure compliance with riding in tandem guidelines under GCQ, said a group of riders expressed willingness to help authorities enforce the guidelines. The Joint Task Force identified the group as the Riders of the Philippines, which said its members will take part in Operation Habal Watch to avoid the abuse of pillion riding restrictions and to protect the riding public. The DOTR ordered all tollway operators to implement full cashless toll collection by November 2, 2020. The DOTR issued the order ostensibly as a measure against the spread of COVID-19. Tollway operators immediately expressed support for the directive. The Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation, or MPTC, said it was ready to shift from manual toll collection to full RFID-enabled system. It also assured that any RFID sticker installed by its provider, Easy Trip Corporation, will be compatible throughout the MPTC network of expressways. This includes NLEX, SCTEX, Cavitex, and Calax. The LTO announced that it will begin issuing driver's licenses with 10-year validity beginning on October 21, 2021. This is in line with the provision of Republic Act No. 10930, which entitles holders of 5-year licenses who have no traffic violation records to be issued licenses with a 10-year validity period. The LTO also devised a new point system for driver's license holders. Under the system, demerit points will be given to drivers depending on the classification of their violations or traffic regulations. Repeated violation of the same light or less grave offenses can be upgraded to grave and earn maximum demerits, the LTO said. Around 7 months after ECQ was declared, and many frontliner and essential workers began using bikes as personal transport, a network of bike lanes was established connecting major roads, residential areas, and high-volume commuter areas that lead to major medical facilities in Manila and Quezon City. Road traffic signs were installed in the bike lane network to guide pedestrians, the bikers, and motorists, and help prevent accidents. The project was fast-tracked by the DOTR, DPWH, and MMDA as part of efforts to promote safe and healthy transportation in the shift to the new normal amid the COVID-19 pandemic. DOTR officials and members of media got to see one of the tunnel boring machines, or TBMs, to be used in the construction of the Metro Manila subway. The TBM was shown during a virtual tour and factory acceptance test of the plant in Japan, where the TBMs are manufactured and assembled. 6 TBMs will be used in the construction of the Metro Manila subway section from Valenzuela to North Avenue. Another 14 TBMs will be used for the remaining sections of the railway project. The first batch of TBMs are expected to be delivered in January and February 2021. The 36-kilometer subway will connect Bulacan to Dasmariñas in Cavite, passing through NCR, and will have 15 stations. The EDSA busway added 3 more median bus stops. The new ones are at North Avenue, Quezon Avenue, and Nepacumar. This makes it 7 bus stops along the median lanes of EDSA. The first 4 were established at Guadalupe, Ortigas, Santolan, and Main Avenue. Already, much of EDSA has concrete barriers and bollards separating the lane for buses from the lanes meant for private motorists. Bollards are preferred after much public concern about the safety of concrete barriers. The EDSA busway will have 29 bus stops. 15 are already in place in September, but some still need the necessary infrastructure, including barriers, railings, lights, roofs, to make them safe and convenient for passengers. The MRT-3 resumed operations using 19 train sets. 3 of these are from the CCRC Dalian Co. The Dalian train sets underwent intested tests before they could be commissioned for use at the MRT. They also had to pass independent technical evaluation conducted by third-party consultant TUV Rhineland of Germany. According to the DOTR, Dalian refitted the 3 train sets for safe and efficient use on the MRT-3 without additional costs to the government.
That was an interesting third quarter of the year that was in motoring in the time of COVID-19.
Please stay with us for a review of the final quarter of the year after this break.
This Motoring Today year-end special episode is brought to you by Honda Cars Philippines, Mitsubishi Motors Philippines, Prudential Guarantee, Suzuki Philippines, and Toyota Motor Philippines.
What do we go for? We go for experience. We go for excitement. We go for sport. We go for style. We go for fun. We go for the new Toyota Wigo.
Again, welcome to our year-end special on the year that was in motoring in the time of COVID-19.
We're down to the last quarter of the year, and it's a relatively busy one.
The week of October sees motorists having to adjust the closure of the first 13 EDSA U-turns the MMDA planned to close to make way for complete and full operation of the EDSA busway. The first U-turn to be closed was the one near Trinoma Mall and North Avenue. The MMDA had placed directional signs to guide motorists to routes that could be used in place of the U-turn the day before it was closed. But many motorists still claim to be ignorant of the closure. There was a lot of chaos and confusion, and traffic enforcers had their hands full sorting out the mess. Still, the MMDA is steadfast in closing the U-turns to ensure that the EDSA busway will have a traffic-free lane on EDSA from Balintawak to the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange and back. The next to close were the U-turn slots in front of the Quezon City Academy. This time, MMDA Chairman Danilo Lim deployed additional traffic constables to manage traffic. Heading into the final quarter of the year, transport authorities began preparations for allowing provincial buses to resume operations on 12 routes from cities and towns north and south of Metro Manila under strict guidelines. The LTFRB said the 12 routes were drawn following consultations with local government units, terminal and bus operators, and other stakeholders. The provincial buses operating in the 12 routes will comply with all health safety protocols mandated by the IATF. Buses will be installed with global navigation satellite system for easy monitoring. Passengers need to present travel authority or passes from the PNP from origin, a valid ID, and a written consent to undergo COVID-19 testing or quarantine at origin or destination if required by the LGUs concerned. NLEX Corporation found a way to fast-track the completion of its 8-kilometer NLEX Connector project while helping resuscitate the economy and many OFWs who lost their jobs abroad as a consequence of the global pandemic. NLEX announced the plan to hire 1,500 technical and skilled workers to accelerate the construction of the 8-kilometer NLEX connector project. It added that priority will be given to returning overseas Filipino workers. The NLEX connector is an all-vehicle class elevated expressway that extends from the Caloocan interchange, then passes on through 5th Avenue and C3 Road in Caloocan City and España to eventually link up with the Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3 at PUP Santa Mesa in Manila. The DOTR stopped the mandatory use of beep cards to pay for rides on the EDSA busway following a dispute with AF Payments Incorporated. After hearing complaints from EDSA busway passengers about having to pay added charges beyond the cost of the fare using the beep card, DOTR Secretary Arthur Tugade requested AF Payments Inc. to waive the cost of the beep cards. When it refused, the DOTR implemented what it called the dual payment system. Those who already purchased and loaded beep cards can still use them. Those who haven't will have to pay for their rides at booths manned by EDSA Busway Consortia personnel set up at the stations. Meanwhile, the DOTR said the EDSA Busway Consortia is looking for another AFCS provider. The LTFRB turned DOTR Secretary Tugade's request into a directive. The LTFRB issued Memorandum Circular Number 2020-057 on the subject of which calls for, as stated in the heading, the removal of fees of AFCS cards charged to commuters apart from fare load. The circular warned PUV operators and AFCS providers that failure to comply with the order will be cause for immediate suspension of the automatic fare collection system, aside from the penalties to be imposed pursuant to existing issuances of the LTFRB against operators. In October, MRT3 trains began running at a max 40 kilometers per hour. The MRT said trains can now run faster than 30 kph following the replacement of old railroad tracks as part of the massive rehabilitation program of the rail line being implemented by Sumitomo Mitsubishi Heavy Industries from Japan. With the trains running faster, waiting time for trains at stations became shorter, the MRT3 said. Angkas found allies in the Technical Working Group, or TWG, and the IATF in its quest to be allowed to resume motorcycle taxi hailing services. The TWG that looked into the results of the pilot study on the operation of motorcycle taxis supports the enactment of laws to make them a legal mode of public transport. According to DOTR Assistant Secretary for Communications and Commuter Affairs Goddess Hope Libiran, Secretary Tugade also sees no problem with allowing motorcycle taxis to resume operation. The IATF also endorsed to the House Committee on Transportation the recommendation to draft an appropriate Congress resolution to allow motorcycle taxis back into operation. The DOTR and the Land Bank of the Philippines signed 6 memorandum of agreements on initiatives aimed at improving the mass transport system as well as helping those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and government's development programs. The MOAs cover the establishment of a resettlement action plan and entitlements distribution mechanism for individuals and families affected by the North-South Commuter Railway Extension Project, the provision of direct cash subsidies to road-based public transport stakeholders, the support package for environment-friendly and efficiently driven PUVs, rehabilitation support to alleviate enterprises affected by the COVID-19 global crisis, the iRescue bus transport lending program, and contactless pilot production testing for the automated fare collection system in various public transport modes. San Miguel Corporation President and Chief Operating Officer Ramon Ang announced the completion of the 17.93-kilometer Skyway 3 that only needs a few finishing touches before it can be opened to motorists. The Skyway 3 is seen to shorten travel time from SLEX to the NLEX to just 20 minutes, Magallanes to Balintawak to only 15 minutes, and Valenzuela to Makati to just 10 minutes. Ang also said he expects the completion of the northbound section of the Skyway extension, which provides additional lanes and connects the South Luzon Expressway to the Skyway near Susana Heights and the Muntinlupa-Cavite Expressway, to be completed by December. The company promised a Christmas gift to motorists. When finishing touches on the Skyway 3 are done, asphalting, lane markings and signage and lighting, motorists can enjoy the elevated tollway connecting NLEX to SLEX for free for the whole of December. With the November 2 deadline approaching, NLEX reported undertaking physical and system improvements at toll plazas to ensure that RFID transactions are smoothly implemented at the NLEX and SE-Tax. These included installation of new and refinement of existing RFID systems and other innovations at the NLEX and SE-Tax to provide efficient expressway travel experiences to customers with a 100% shift to RFID tollway payments. This came amid complaints and criticism trending in both social and traditional media about the difficulty in getting RFIDs and inefficiency of the system at toll gates, resulting in traffic congestion. The DOTR finally took notice of the long lines at RFID installation sites, traffic congestion inside tollways, and complaints of RFID readers not working properly, and decided to move the date for full cashless transaction at toll gates to December 1. To make it easier to get RFIDs for use at the NLEX, Cavitex, SE-Tax, HarborLink, and Calax, Easy Trip Corporation launched the online RFID reservation and appointment system, or ORAS. Motorists can book their appointments online, choose their preferred date, time, and venue for getting the stickers, and head to the venue at the appointed hour. San Miguel announced that it was putting up 100 additional RFID installation sites to accommodate the large volume of applications for the auto sweep RFIDs to be used at its network of tollways, which include the Star, SLEX, Skyway, NAIA-X, and TP-Lex. San Miguel President Ramon Ang also assured motorists that they can still avail of free RFID stickers even after the December 1 implementation of cashless toll collection.
The DOTR and Commission on Higher Education signed a Memorandum of Understanding to fast-track educational and skills development programs and certifications for railway employees and workers. This is in line with the government's plan to establish massive railway networks from Luzon, the Visayas to Mindanao, which need skilled workers, technicians, and engineers. Under the MOU, CHED will focus, among other things, on developing a system of credits for the certification trainings of the Philippine Railways Institute to be converted into academic units while reviewing the content and outcomes contained in the PRI certificate program. A few weeks later, the Philippine Railways Institute held online graduation rites for 76 trainees who successfully completed a retraining course and passed the comprehensive examination on passenger management, fare and ticketing management, commercial train driving, and railway maintenance. The trainees are operations and maintenance personnel of various railways or rail transit operators who have at least 6 months work experience. SM Prime Holdings, DM Wenceslao and Associates Incorporated, and Double Dragon Properties Corporation agreed to construct the EDSA busway bridges with concourses at no cost to government. The bridges will provide safer, more convenient walkways for the riding public, including persons with disabilities, seniors, and pregnant women using the EDSA busway stations, as well as pedestrians crossing EDSA from one side to the other. Under agreement signed with the DOTR, the companies will construct the EDSA busway bridges with concourse at the SM Mall of Asia, SM North EDSA, SM Mega Mall, President D. Macapagal Boulevard in Asiana City, and at EDSA near the corner of President D. Macapagal Avenue. The North Luzon Expressway has begun charging the toll rate adjustments approved by the Toll Regulatory Board after the completion and opening of the NLEX Harbor Link back in June. The toll adjustments took effect on November 25. Class 1 vehicles were charged an additional 4 pesos in the flat rate for use of the open system. Class 2 vehicles like buses and small trucks pay an additional 10 pesos. Class 3 vehicles an additional 11 pesos. The toll per kilometer in the closed system was also increased. The Department of Tourism and the Tourism Promotions Board launched Motorismo, an initiative aimed at encouraging motorcycle riders and enthusiasts to visit and rediscover local tourist attractions. Motorismo will tap influential motorcycle enthusiasts as domestic tourism ambassadors who are in a position to help promote the Philippines as a country of fun and diverse experiences. It will also encourage operators to create new tour programs to be offered to both domestic and international tourists,
help those who lost their jobs jumpstart small businesses, and generally serve as a platform to disseminate information on safety and health protocols for traveling, the DOT said. In the final month of the year, the DOTR and the Department of National Defense, or DND, signed a right-of-way agreement covering 5 properties owned by the DND where stations or access to the planned Metro Manila subway project would be built. The agreement is expected to help fast-track completion of the subway, seen as the legacy project of the Duterte administration. It covers military properties where some of the stations and terminal interchange plazas, as well as access to camps, will be built.
That was our look into the last quarter of the year that was in motoring.
We will wrap up our year-end special when we return after this break.
Drive worry-free with Prudential Guarantees Auto Insurance Program with a free 24-hour nationwide roadside assistance included with your comprehensive auto insurance. Rest assured, we'll take care of you and your car wherever you are. Prudential Guarantees Auto Insurance Program, 100% worry-free driving.
This Motoring Today year-end special episode is brought to you by Honda Cars Philippines, Mitsubishi Motors Philippines, Prudential Guarantee, Suzuki Philippines, and Toyota Motor Philippines. Welcome back to our year-end special on the year that was in motoring in the time of COVID-19. It was no doubt a difficult, indeed a transformational year. Many predict that much of what symbolized the year 2020, the wearing of face masks, the face shield, perhaps even the angkas protective shields will still be with us in 2021.
And many believe, too, that 2020 will be remembered, aside from being the year of COVID-19, for many changes it brought, forced upon us, or by deliberate plan, in motoring and in mass transport. The EDSA busway, bikes for personal mobility, more bike lanes, can't wait for the promised metro-wide network of bike lanes, cashless toll collection, model tourism, modern PUVs, online transactions with LTO, LTFRB, etc.
The year that was will also be remembered for many in the private sector who stepped up to help government in the fight against COVID-19 and in helping frontliners. It was also heartening to witness how government agencies, in partnership with the private sector, the DPWH, should have a special mention, were not faced by the pandemic and instead took advantage of the lockdowns to fast-track road, rail, and other infrastructure projects.
The DOTR, the LTO, and the LTFRB noticeably took advantage of the quarantine periods to advance plans to modernize and rationalize our mass transport system. We have yet to see if all that was accomplished or started in the year that was in motoring in a time of COVID-19 will bring out a new year of more efficient, safer, comfortable commute, and more importantly, enjoyable, fun, and yes, happy motoring.
We here at Motoring Today certainly hope and pray that it will. Thank you for joining us on this year-end special. My name is Suzy Gamboa.
I'm Ray Louie Gamboa. On behalf of our dad, Butch Gamboa, and all of us here in Motoring Today and Sunshine Television,
We wish you all a happy and blessed holidays.